Hi there, Dan Ediel, Chief Marketing Officer here at Tanda. I'm here today, as you would have seen from some of our other videos, to have a little casual conversation and a fireside chat with some of our speakers that will be speaking at the Workforce Success Conference on July 26th up here at the Hilton in Brisbane. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by National Food Manager Gary Johnson. How are you going?
Great, thanks Dan, and good to hear that the conference is back at one of my old stomping grounds there at the Hilton in Brisbane. And I worked for Hilton for, I suppose, nearly about 10 years, just before joining the Coles Group, or Spirit Hotels Group, where now I've managed 89 hotels all around the country, from a food, hospitality, bistro perspective, obviously, and it's been a really exciting journey.
Yeah, nice. And so today, before I go any further, I probably want to extend an invitation to anyone who wants to throw any questions at any point or has any messages to jump onto our socials. Check out our Facebook. You can also send messages via Twitter at TandaHQ. But today we'll be talking about, hospitality a fair bit. Let's maybe take it a little bit back. I know you're talking about the journey there, but can you talk about perhaps where you grew as a manager and as a person in the hospitality space?
Dan. Look, I started off in hospitality in the kitchen, the back of house. I became a qualified chef and worked at, I suppose, several places around Brisbane before going nationally and working in another couple of bigger cities. I also did about 11 years overseas, and what I've derived from those experiences were that hospitality, and I'm sure most of us have travelled anyway, is as diverse as it is a potpourri, not only of different dishes, skills, nationalities, but any country, anywhere you go, everybody loves great food, and everybody loves hospitality, and we've only just got to recognise that by the hotels, the fast food outlets. I mean, good Lord, McDonald's is all around the world as well. So in saying that, I think probably some of the lessons that I brought back with me from those travels and experiences was the authenticity and the heartfelt being a people person in the hospitality industry, which really helps you to enjoy looking after other people, especially in your own venues.
That's something interesting that you bring up, talking about people, and quite a lot of what Tanda does is about the people in the workforce, and we have that idea of workforce success, which is what the conference is all about. Mm-hmm. When people are successful and your teams are successful, the business then becomes successful.
Yes.
So sometimes I think hospitality gets a bit of a bad rap from the sensationalism or a lot of the pop culture around chefs in particular. Mm-hmm. Do you find that also people tend to generalise when people talk hospitality, they're just talking chefs?
Sometimes, I suppose, and look, there's a little bit of a stigma attached to some of the standalone businesses, or the ones that don't have a way of working. And I find that if that's the case, then sure, you get a few delinquents, can I say, in the industry that perhaps give it a little bit of a bad name, and you'll see that on media, your social media especially, about the misdemeanours and possibly the misbehaviour of some of those people. But what I can say is that I've kind of been lucky enough and spent about 80% of my time with large corporates and chains like the Hilton and Four Seasons and of course Coles just recently as well. And we have ways of working, and it's really about, I believe, ladies and gentlemen looking after ladies and gentlemen. And I also think that if you give people that respect that you deserve, it always comes back to you. So when I say, some of the chefs can misbehave, they're the ones that don't really last very long in our industry, and they probably don't get the best out of their people in the long term anyway. And if it's only a short term thing, well, you've wasted your time and money. So that can only end in sadness.
Last year, I remember at the conference, you were speaking on a panel as well, and one of the big things there was the turnover rate. I believe was at Spirit Hotels at a certain point was quite high. And it was lower. Was it Spirit Hotels? Yeah.
Very good memory, Dan.
Yeah.
I think when I first joined the group, we had a turnover of around about 150%.
Wow.
Pretty diabolical. But it was a little bit disjointed, a little bit disconnected. One of my colleagues, actually, Katrina Gill, fantastic in the HR department, we shared a common background coming from five-star hotels and also international experience where we dealt with not only a lot of different nationalities but also a lot of diversity in our people. And I can tell you that it's really rewarding and it makes our industry so much richer by embracing that. So we got talking, and of course we put plans together, and instead of wasting time and money from both sides of the fence, we put things in like succession plans, we talked about development, but we really got down to being in touch with our people and learning how to understand what they wanted from us as a leadership team, and also what the business could give back to them long term for their careers as well. And I can tell you honestly, we cut our turnover, I think it's down around the mid-40s or low 40% now, and that can often only be driven by some of the casuals or some of the students that we employ from time to time. But in the 7.5 years that I've been with the group, we still have the same people that I interviewed and employed who started as kitchen hands, who are now head chefs, who may have started casually waiting on tables whilst they were going to college or university, who have now diversified and even done a hospitality degree and have ended up running some of the hotels for us as well. So there is a really great career path and a trajectory from the beginning. If you're a people person, if you love hospitality, then it will be very good to you.
When you're managing people, do you have any, tips for anyone on how to approach managing staff, particularly in the hospitality space? And two, is it a cookie cutter approach, or do you have to adapt that for every single individual?
Good question, Dan. I don't believe it's a cookie cutter approach by any means, and I think when I've not only done, many different, I've done small restaurants, I've done big hotels, several different countries, but what I do know is that you have to, somewhat like a chameleon, draw on those managerial experiences and your own resources to be able to find out what works best with which people. I tend to find the chefs especially are very tactile learners, they're very career focused, but then that would probably amount for at least 75 to 80% of them. The others are just more than happy to come in to get the job done, to do it as best as they can, and then to go back to their families. So the other thing I believe that really helps managing people is getting them to trust you enough so that when you have the conversations about where they see themselves, what they would like to have from their career or from the industry, and then being able to adapt your management style to deliver that. Not only will you get great team members, you will also get their trust, and you will also get them to stay with you. Generally, I also find that people don't necessarily work for a particular company, although that definitely has a bearing, but they'll work for leaders that they respect, appreciate, and trust. That's the big key.
You mentioned obviously working with teams there and how it differs from team to team, business to business. What are some tips you can give to creating culture in the hospitality business?
Culture is integral, and I believe very much so in any service industry, and especially in the hospitality business. If you have a progressive, dynamic, cohesive culture, then you generally have a pretty healthy business. I can look at spreadsheets from hotels, I can go through the P&Ls, and you can see how deep the culture goes, or you can see let's say, the cohesiveness or the ways of working, and whether or not they've been successful in those individual businesses just by the results that they achieve on the profit and loss. I know that sounds a little bit far-fetched, but I also believe that from time to time, deep data analytics is no substitute for intuition. So whilst we all think things are rosy and looking pretty glossy on the surface, you can back up that intuition with some deep data analytics, and it'll give you a pretty good indication of how the business is travelling as well as the culture, because that's what makes it work.
That's really interesting to me, coming from a marketing background, where back in the day people were doing above the line advertising and really going with their hunches. Now it's big data, and sure we have that, but sometimes you're right, there is times where you need to use the intuition even there.
Yep.
And I'm sure some marketers will hate me for saying that you can't always rely just on the data, but we have a lot of data scientists in the business as well.
Sure.
No, it's good to have a little someone else on the same page as well.
Well, experience will give you a hunch and obviously give you that intuition, but you can definitely validate it by some analytics.
Yeah, fair enough. I've got a few more questions that I want to dig into. However, first we'll just head over to a break and then we'll be right back.
No worries.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying around. I know, hoping people don't run off mid-break, which is really good. We were talking about teams. We talked about culture, and you mentioned that when you would work for some businesses, there have been probably shortages of people. 150% at one time turnover. That generally means there's a deficiency, right? Mm-hmm. There's in general a skills deficiency in Australia, and I feel like in some areas of the world as well, across a multitude of trades. Mm-hmm. So I just want to ask, why do you think that deficiency exists, that skills deficiency?
Look, training's not cheap, and I think my attitude is it's better to train people and have them not stay for a long time rather than not train them and have them stay for a long time. So as ironic as that sounds, a lot of businesses, if they're not a part of a larger corporate or at least a particular manual where they can follow some of those structures, then it begins to become quite expensive. So I believe the best and most efficient way in your business is to identify the people that you've spent a bit of time on that can deliver not only the culture but also the skills and the competencies that you need in that role or that particular business, and buddy them up with the new people coming in. The most important part is definitely having somebody there that can mentor that new person coming in, that can guide them, that can kind of simple things. Show them where to have lunch, for goodness sake, but just be able to answer the questions, I suppose dispel or dissolve any anxieties that they may have about, we've all been there, we've all started a new job. It can be a pretty nervous time. So if you've got somebody that can look after that person, at least for the first 3 weeks one-on-one, and then follow it up yourself and talk to them after the first month, or maybe after the first week, the first month, and then the first quarter, make sure that you follow that up and you actually give them the time. Sit down and give them, it might only be 15 minutes, but it is a valuable piece of time and investment that you'll make with that person. I generally find if you get those people through and they're strong enough and they enjoy the first 3 months, you'll have them for 3 years or even longer. So that to me would be the best advice I give anybody if they're having a high turnover.
I did want to ask though, speaking of the attrition rate, do you think that there's a prevailing sense in young people these days that hospitality isn't a trade that they should seek out or go after?
Well, that's another good question, Dan, because I think on a lot of occasions we do employ quite a few students, and I think personally you've got to have that mix, a few students, a few permanent people, and a few career-minded or let's say career-focused people as well. The hospitality industry, unfortunately and historically, has kind of been one of those jobs you have while you're waiting for a real job, and that it's not held in that higher regard perhaps, although there are degrees and diplomas and lots of qualifications that you can have. But what I would say to anybody embarking on or upon this industry initially is sure, get an apprenticeship, get some training, get yourself to a level where you can actually have something to sell. The best thing I found about it was that anywhere and everywhere you go, people need hospitality people. So it's kind of like a ticket to ride. It gives you a fantastic experience to not only travel through different cities or countries for that matter, but along the way you gather skills, you gather experiences, you gather knowledge. There's a lot of benefits to that. And then if you do so choose to have this particular industry as your career, get a degree or get another qualification in there to allow you to be able to then pass those skills back to the next generation. call it management, senior leadership, whatever, but I think that's our obligation as much as we have taken out of the industry to also put back in.
And on that note, do you find it gets to a certain point for, particularly when we talk about going down the chef route, there is the decision, do I just keep either opening up my own restaurant and running into business management, or do I just keep working as a head chef, or do I then move into executive work or working outside? Is that a crossroads?
It can be. Look, I would suggest to anybody, I had my own business for 4 years as well. We had a great time, but it's a different sort of energy. And I think you've got to really know a little bit more about yourself, as well as you do your team. But people have different ideas of what's wealth and what is success to them. And I probably say that really success is not so much a journey as it is a point in time. So if you say to yourself, well, success for me will be to have a job that pays the bills, pays the mortgage, but also allows me to spend time with my young family, drop them off at school, pick them up in the afternoon, all that kind of thing, have Sundays off, go to church, whatever you need to do. But that for some people is wealth, because they have the security of working for a larger corporation or another company that they can see themselves doing 10 years. Other people may see wealth in knowledge and experience. So it doesn't matter how many hours they put in or how hard they work, all they want is the wealth and experience. And they're the people that you sit down with and you say, okay, well, if this is what you need, I'm going to challenge you. Not every day is going to be a diamond, some are going to be stones, but you will progress and I will push you to your optimum and possibly beyond your own expectations to achieve your full potential. So those honest conversations are also how you need to deal with the people who say to me or suggest that, hey, I want your job in 12 months or 12 years or whatever it may be. So they're the ones that, like any Olympian or anybody who's going to go beyond the boundaries, you've got to fight hard. So that's one extreme to the other when it comes to, I suppose, people's perceptions of wealth and success and how they treat their own careers and their jobs, for that matter.
You talked about success being a certain point in time rather
Yes.
than a destination, and that sounds like also you need the right people for the right time. And
Yes, you do.
So there are times when you do need some people to come in, the fighting fish, who are like come in, want to rise to the top and like get things done. And you want those ones who just do the job, come in, because now you have a successful business. Maybe you just need people who can just like ride it out and keep it going.
And that's a quality or a competency in any good leader, is being able to build the right team.
Yeah, right.
If I filled all my kitchens with Luke Mangans and Matt Moran's,
Wouldn't be a very good kitchen.
Well,
actually,
like a fighting fish, they probably all kill each other anyway.
Yeah.
So there's the fatalities coming back.
And it'd be a very interesting menu as well. They're very competing. So.
Yep, and there's knives in kitchens, so look out. But either way, I think you've got to have and be able to identify what you need in your team. And you need patient, perseverant people. You need go-getters. You need the ones that make things happen and the ones that sit back and watch things happen. But more importantly, they're a part of that team, and that's where it really counts.
No, that's really insightful. On that note, can you tell us a little bit more about what you might be speaking about and talking on the panel at the conference?
Sure. I'd like to talk about all these topics and possibly some of my own experiences. I tell a few stories from time to time, but it's probably more about the mentoring and any successful leader, as I mentioned. You can tell people what to do and you'll get workers, but if you show people what to do, if you mentor them, develop them and get to know them even better and then trust them, you get leaders. And I think any good leader and the mark of their own success should be in developing other leaders, and that's what we're all about. So I'll talk a little bit about that because it's a topic very near and dear to my heart. And when I look around at the business I've spent the last 7.5 years in, I'm surrounded by great leaders now. So that's the legacy. And I'd like to talk a little bit more about that when we get the chance.
Well, I'm keen, and for those watching, if you'd like to hear more, please join us on July 26th at the Hilton, your old stomping ground. It will be an amazing day. Will be about 500 people there. There'll be a lot of topics, amazing speakers. Steve Baxter, I spoke to yesterday. We've got Amanda Lutfi, Mikey Ellis, Gary Mortimer, yourself. So please come along, jump on to workforcesuccess.com to grab tickets, and you'll be able to purchase them there. And it's going to be an incredible day full of, I think, a lot of knowledge and good networking opportunities as well. And I'm sure the party at night will be quite enjoyable as well.
Great experience.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
Pleasure, Dan.
Really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys next time.